Adonis Stevenson versus Sakio Bika. Let me start by talking about the scorecards briefly. I think one of the judges had this 115-110. If we consider that Bika was dropped on 2 occasions, had there been no knockouts, that judge would most likely have scored the fight 115-112. The other 2 judges were less generous to Bika, but very, very similar. I think 1 point more in Adonis' favour. I find that incredibly bizarre. I pretty much scored Adonis Stevenson every single round in this fight. I thought it was a whitewash. I really thought he absolutely dominated from start to finish. Bika, he wasn't able to jab his way in. That's no surprise being Sakio Bika. And he pretty much was a sitting duck for Adonis Stevenson all night. Bika's usual tactic is to kind of force his way in, rough opponents up on the inside, get into a wrestling match. There was some of that tonight, but it was very limited. And I felt maybe up at £175, Bika wasn't able to enforce and inflict these tactics on his opponents like he has against slightly smaller guys at 168. Bearing that in mind, maybe it's better for him to consider moving back down to 168 rather than continuing to campaign at 175. Bika offered very little offensively. The only times he caught Adonis Stevenson clean, in my opinion, was when Adonis Stevenson was being sloppy and when he was kind of losing concentration in the fight because he was winning so easily. I think Adonis' southpaw stance caused Bika a bit of confusion. Adonis' jab it's not a powerful jab, it's not a hurtful, stinging jab, but it's a good range finder, and it constantly sort of opened and measured the range for Adonis' long left-hand cross, which I thought was a real weapon. Dropped Sakio Bika twice heavily. And although both were heavy knockouts, fair play to Sakio Bika, who got up, who showed his durability, and neither time he looked like he was about to get counted out. I think Adonis Stevenson was quite sensible and defensively minded in the sense that when he had Bika hurt, he was very patient. It's a very calm, collected performance. He really sort of didn't look to rush things, didn't look to force the knockout, and he was happy to kind of wait and try and go the distance if needs be. He didn't force the knockout, which I guess is a positive thing. Things to like about Adonis Stevenson's performance: he took very little from Bika. His straight left was a constant, powerful weapon that looked like it could change the course of the fight at any moment. And I also thought, his movement was a bit more advanced than I've seen before. He was so much lighter on his feet than Sakio Bika. Maybe that's not saying a lot, but I thought he was boxing at decent angles from his southpaw stance. I thought he was circling quite nicely, and I thought he looked like a bit more mobile and a bit of a mover than I've seen before. So I was impressed by that. I thought he did well. As I say, I probably scored the fight something like 120, 106, 119, 107, maybe if we're being really generous, 118, 108. So how the judges were able to turn around scorecards like 115, 110, I mean, that suggests that barring the knockouts, this was actually a close competitive fight. I mean, admittedly, there were 1 or 2 rounds that were a bit nothing rounds that maybe I slightly preferred Stevenson in, but that gives the impression this was a close fight, and I really didn't think that was the case. Stevenson is a threat to all in the division, Sergei Kovalev, you'd have to make him a favourite in that fight. But, we saw Kovalev having some defensive deficiencies against Jean Pascal last time out, and with Stevenson's power, he's certainly live in that fight. I think the difficulty is that Stevenson is quite predictable. His jab isn't hurtful. His punch variety is very limited. We don't really see Stevenson throwing hooks. We don't really see him throwing uppercuts. We don't really see him having much of an inside game. He's a long 1-2 from distance, and he can throw that straight left to the head. He can throw it to the body, but that's all it is. It's one hand, and it's one punch, and it's straight left hand. Now, someone like Sakio Bika tonight didn't make any adjustments. He was getting peppered by that, and he just kind of continued. Bika got through because of his toughness and his durability. Now, a fighter like Bernard Hopkins, he's got the toughness and durability that Bika has. Bika and Hopkins are similar in that sense. But where the difference is clear is that Hopkins is a much more advanced boxer. Hopkins would hopefully see what Adonis Stevenson was doing and make adjustments that Bika didn't have the skill or the sort of boxing technical capability to make. And you just wonder, with a fighter like Adonis Stevenson, who really doesn't have versatility and appears to have one string to his bow, will a more advanced boxer like a Bernard Hopkins type be able to figure him out and get the job done against him? I don't know. I think that could be a really, really tight fight, and I'd really like to see that fight. Sergey Kovalev, I think it's a bit early to say that he's a master boxer like Bernard Hopkins, but he has shown huge boxing capability, and he's certainly got more variety to his work than Adonis Stevenson. He's got weapons in everywhere. It's not just one punch. So I think that is something to consider for Adonis Stevenson. If he faces a real master boxer, someone like an Andre Ward, someone like a Bernard Hopkins, could he be worked out? Could someone come up with a game plan to beat him, bearing in mind that he only has one weapon? I think that's possible, and I think that was really enforced tonight. Sakio Bika couldn't make the adjustments, but fighters in future may well be able to. I won't talk too much about Artur Beterbiev. Maybe I'll do a separate video on him in time. But if you look at his performance against Gabriel Campillo, you saw a huge variety to his arsenal. You saw weapons all over the place. You saw power coming from a number of different punches and different angles. Perhaps that's a tougher puzzle to solve. I'm getting caught up in my words here. Perhaps a fighter like that is a tougher puzzle to solve than a guy like Adonis Stevenson. Anyway, I'm cracking up at this end. It's getting late. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks very much for watching.